I want you to become an expert mixer and matcher. Your job is to mix all these different things up, realize the similarities and the dissimilarities, things you like, things you don't like, and then match them together. And what do you find the most valuable? What impact do you want to make? How do you want to manifest that on a daily basis? Where will this be taking place? To every ambitious 20-something-year-old, this is for you. And yes, I am talking about you. Welcome to the Talking Shop podcast, where I'm here to share stories, lessons, and experiences in sports performance and professional development. I'm your host, Matt Tometz, and I'm here to bring you new perspectives, new lenses, which you can bring to the table, doing your job, living your life to help you do your job better. And in this episode, I am here to relate. I'm here to share stories. I'm here to inspire for that ambitious 20-something-year-old from my own experiences. And I'm very excited to get into it. So let's do it. First, I feel you. Sorry for yelling in caps. And that you are not alone. I know this is probably the quarter-life crisis that I'm way too familiar with. You are not alone. And it is such an interesting time in your life because for the first time, which I'll get into, you have no box and no story. But if there's one thing, hence why this is slide number 2, that I want you to take home is that I feel you. You are not alone. And we're going to figure this out. So who the heck am I? This guy trying to speak to all ambitious 20-something-year-olds. Well, I myself am an ambitious 20-something-year-old. I am 24 at the time of recording, almost 25. I played college baseball in Missouri. I did my graduate assistantship in sports science at TCU. I'm a podcast host, aka this. I'm a performance coach and sports scientist at a private facility up in Chicago. And there's all of these times at each point in my journey so far that I have made stuff happen. I've been ambitious. I've wanted more, and I have made it happen. So it's a little bit about me and the lens in which I'll be sharing some of these stories and experiences. Very briefly, just other episodes I have similar to this topic is episode 94 and episode 98 on my podcast, as well as a YouTube video, kind of just sharing my experiences, job searching, and different stuff like that. So I'm not going to repeat all of that stuff, and I have other material on this topic. So the hardest part about being an ambitious 20-something-year-old is not having a story. And if you think about everything up until this point in time, you have had a story, right? The first sport team you try out for that you make, that's more than just like house league. The first travel team you make, you become a X player, a baseball player, a basketball player, a soccer player. And then you have your friends at school relative to that sport, or whether you do theater or choir or whatever it may be. You're just, oh, I'm Matt and I play baseball, and then you commit to a university. And then that becomes your MO for your senior year. And then you get off to school and then you join a frat, or you start doing intramurals, or you do all these clubs and stuff like that. And that just becomes what you do and kind of who you are, or at least who you tell yourself you are, which I'll get into later. And if you think about up until this point in time, years, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and 20 to whatever you are now, is that you've always had a story. And, just these 3 pictures here, I was the walk-on. I walked on to my baseball team, and that's when I finally got all my jerseys a third of the way into my freshman year. Next, that's me and Eric Cressy. Oh, that's a story for a different day. I fangirled so hard when I met him, but it's fine. Hopefully he forgot. I was an intern and I was a coach. And I just coached there every summer when I was home. And then I went off to TCU and I was the sports scientist for the beach team, and then you graduate and you're an adult. So it's not that you don't have a story. It's that the one you currently have takes exponentially longer to write than simply making a team or to simply accepting a job. At least if you're ambitious and you want more. When you're younger, it's enough to make the team. It's enough to get into the frat. It's enough to do a few clubs. So that is the hardest part, is not having a very distinct or a very immediate story. The second hardest part is not having a box. And this kind of, not to speak in generalities, but kind of speaks to I don't want to hate on the school system. I hate when people do that. But when you're growing up, you're going to wake up at this time. School starts here. You go to XYZ class. You have 8 periods. You have to do this homework. Here's the study guide. Hey, here's the test that is the study guide. Oh, this is the standardized test you'll be taking. This is when you'll be taking it. This is when you have to apply to school and all this different kind of stuff. This is when school ends. This is when the school year is. Then you get off to college, and it's more or less the same thing, besides maybe changing your schedule around. And it's easy having a box because there's no guesswork. Everything's laid out for you. All you have to do is go and do. You don't have to create or draw a box at all. And here's just some examples. So my freshman year, I did this NCAA leadership thing, Purple Squad. Oh, that was so long ago. But I wanted to do it, so then I applied and I went and I made it happen. Besides actually applying, I didn't really have to do much. I was on our student athlete advisory committee for 3 years. I was the VP for 1 year and the president for my senior year. And that was a club. I knew when they met, I knew our objectives. And I just had to talk with other people on how to make it happen. It was fairly straightforward what the club did. It wasn't rocket science. Someone just had to organize it and just make it happen. And then this bottom picture is me defending, or is this my proposal? Proposing my thesis. And it's fairly laid out for you, or for me when I got to TCU. You do your first semester, you figure out your project, you start collecting data. Your second semester, third semester, you propose the beginning of your second year, you defend your last semester. If you want to submit it for publication, you can do that as well. But even that process, besides actually picking your thesis, and for some people, they don't really get to pick because it depends on what their advisor, their background, or really what they want to do is. So I was fortunate that I kind of got to pick. But that was, laid out for me as well. So not having a box, having to make your own box, is the second hardest part. So let's review. You have no story or identity is what you tell yourself about yourself. And that's for a different episode. But there's these things that you fundamentally have told yourself about yourself up to this point in your 20-something-year-old life that are no longer things. You have no box, so no one is telling you when to wake up, when to be where to be, how to be successful at said thing that you are doing. You can literally do anything you want. And I know some people are going to say, oh, well, with my degree, I have to do this job or whatever it may be. Well, yes, there are some boxes. There is outlines. I wouldn't even call it a box. There are some outlines, yes, for those that want to get nitpicky with my word choice. But you can literally do anything you want. Even people, you can still do anything. I know so many people that are doing stuff not anywhere close, nothing relevant to their degree. So you can literally do anything you want. But you're ambitious. You want to get, so you have no story, no box. You can do anything you want. But you're ambitious. You want to get stuff done and make stuff happen. Now what? So now that we're all on the same page about these things that I've lived for the last 2 years, and I totally relate, and you are not alone, and I feel you. Now what? So you got to start with the why and the what. So why? What impact do you want to make? I want to make a difference because, answer this question or finish this statement. Why is this important to you? What is so important about this to you? What is going to get you out of bed in the morning? What impact you want to make, or I want to make a difference because ... So that's the why, or at least that's how I describe it. What are you going to do, or how are you going to accomplish that? So the impact you want to make or the difference you want to make, how are you going to accomplish that? That is the what. So a statement you can finish is, I find doing this the most valuable. What do you find valuable? What's meaningful to you? What do you enjoy doing? What makes you feel valuable, to use that word again? So these questions and statements are not easy. They will take a lot of time to answer, and they will change, which I'll get to in a second. But you have to ask a ton of questions, not only to yourself, but also to others, because you can learn from them. I'll talk about this on previous episodes, but a lot of questions. You get to better answers from better questions. So here's some questions and statements for you, starting with the why and the what. Next, starting with where. So this is similar to the what, but where. So where will this all be taking place? This is concretely, where will this be done? So this will look like on a daily basis, ... and then describe it, living in real life. What will this be? Where will this be? And you need some direction, because people can say, oh, I want to make an impact in high school athletes' lives because high school sports did so much to me. And I find this the most valuable because it set me up to be the person I am today. Okay, so how are you actually going to do it? I can name 10 jobs that work with high school athletes that can be meaningful and important. So you have to be super crystal clear on a daily basis where this will be. And this will give you so much direction. And so this is the most specific. This is like the manifestation of the what and the why. And because this is the most real, this is the manifested version, the most realistic, what you're actually going to be doing, this can change, and it will. And this goes back to expectations. And this is a really big point, which I will explain further, but simply understanding that whatever this where is, it will change. People want to pop out of school and find that job that they're going to have for the rest of their lives, or they want to have something super specific immediately to their degree or whatever it may be. And I think just knowing that it can and will set you light years away, as opposed to trying to ignore the fact that whatever is next after this episode, or what you're currently living right now, is not one step away from whatever that ultimate thing is. It is not 2 steps away. It's probably 3, 4, 5 steps away, if that. So expectations is a huge theme. So I was so crystal clear on all of these things when I wanted to be a college sports scientist. Why? Why did I want to do it? I guess I'll go back to the slides and just talk through it. So what impact do I want to make? I want to make a difference in elite athletes, because that I find that the most valuable, because it requires more of me as a technician. I want to make a difference in those athletes because they're super competitive and they're elite, but they're still growing as individuals because they're young adults, 18 to 22-year-olds. So I want to make a difference in that population, in elite athletes. And I find it valuable because college sports did a ton for me, and I enjoy the technical challenges of a job. And on a daily basis, this is going to be doing sports science for a university, for multiple teams, or for one team, managing their technology, working with coaching staffs, things like that. So I went ham, absolutely hard. I was cracked. And that's my Gen Z lingo for you. 20s. I'm not a Gen Z, don't worry. I'm just a wannabe. That's a different story. I went ham for a year and a half. So literally networking, and I have a whole episode on this. Literally networking, literally going and meeting people, or at least connecting and chatting with them as best I could for people that had the job that I wanted. I looked up every Power 5 sports scientist I could find, and I hit them up. I said, hey, you have a super cool job. I want to do what you do. How did you get your job? I'd love to learn more about it. And I'm not going to beat this point dead, but I just did that. It was super cool. And now that's not the case, And sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was such a waste of, like, how much time did I spend doing that, you know? And if only I could go back, if I knew what I knew now, or if I knew what I know now, there's just so many hours that went into this. How could I have been so dead set on that when I'm not anymore? And I'll get there. So, what's next? And this is the bane of my existence. Oh my gosh. So, as time has gone on, as I've gotten what I thought I wanted, the answer has become more unclear when people ask me what's next. So when I was finishing up at TCU, graduated the next summer, the next fall, what's next was, do college sports science. So crystal clear, right? I'd gone ham on this journey for so long to do this specific thing. And now, because it's basically been a year since then, as I've gotten more of what I wanted, and what I wanted being my network manifesting itself into people sending jobs my way, or people thinking about me for jobs, or for people just, as opposed to the small talk, get to know each other, they genuinely want to know what I'm doing and what's next. And I tell them, I'm like, I don't know, and it sucks. And I hate giving that answer because I was so crystal clear and it made so much sense to me. And I feel not like a phony because I changed my mind, but I just feel like it shouldn't change. Or I told them one thing, so I don't want to change my answer. So as I've gotten more of those things, and it's funny, like literally, it's like I could put it on a graph because I'm a nerd like that. Time on the X and like knowing what I want to do. It has gone down. It has gone down over time. And I'm okay with that because, like I said, I went so hard and it was so crystal clear and it made so much sense that it made less sense to not do anything about it, if that makes sense. But time has gone on and I have grown and learned and it has changed. So I'm okay with that. And I give credit to two things. I'm asking a ton of the right questions, not only to myself, but to other people. And consequently, they're asking it to me. So one example about wanting to do college sports science is, am I doing it simply to say that I want to be a college sports scientist, or do I really want to be one? And let me explain. So college sports, right? Power Five, it's cool, it's sexy. And one of the questions that was asked to me by my mentor, Steve, who's been on episode 88 and 100, was, how many people that you've met during this networking journey that are college sports scientists or S&C coaches, strength and conditioning, love their job? And I'm like, oh my gosh, none of them, even the ones that say they like it, they've left. And the ones that are in it are tell me that they want to get out, once they feel comfortable telling me those kinds of things. So then I ask myself, I'm like, why do I want to do it? Is it because of the clout? Is it because it'll look good? Or is it because I truly want those challenges of working with that athlete, traveling, requiring more of me as a technician? So there's been a lot of these questions that I've been asking myself, and that's just a few examples. So like I said, I'm asking the right questions, which is consequently how you get to better answers. And I'm taking action. I am actually asking those questions. I am crushing it, or I think so. I hope so, knock on wood, on a daily basis at my job. I'm trying to coach the heck out of my athletes. I'm trying to make fantastic content. Thank you for consuming this. I am pursuing answers to those questions on a daily basis, like I said. So I'm okay because of those two things. So the 4-year question. So what's one thing you wish you could have told yourself 4 years ago that you know now? Or if you had this question asked you, it would change how you would have done the last 4 years. So pause. I want you to a minute to answer this question. So what's one thing you wish you could have told yourself 4 years ago? Pause. So the answer to my question was to accumulate and go and do as many experiences possible. Whatever experiences you can do and you can make happen and you can put in your tool belt and you can learn from that are at least slightly relevant. I'm not saying go do random stuff just for the sake of doing random stuff, but accumulate as much relevant experience as you possibly can. Even if it's probably not going to work out, but it still has some value in it, go do it. So consequently, your mission is to make sure that your answer is different in 4 more years. So in 4 years, if Steve were to ask me this question again, I should not be giving the same answer of accumulate as much experience as possible. Hopefully I would be making that happen on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. So whatever your answer was, I know you came up with a super thoughtful one. I'd love to hear. Send me a DM at Coach Big Toe, IG and Twitter, to make it happen so that is not the same answer in 4 years. So what's the point of all of this? Wrapping up. So dear ambitious 20-something-year-old, it all comes back to expectations. And maybe I'm making this episode because this is all the advice that I should be listening. And of course, you give the best advice to other people that you should be listening to yourself. But of course, you just don't listen to your own advice. So learn from my mistakes. But it all comes back to expectations. So there's all of these expectations that we have, right, to get an immediate story or an immediate part of your identity. Not that what you do is your identity, but so I'll take identity out. There's all of these things that happen relatively quickly, right? You get a story, you get a box, right, of what to do, where, and when to be there. So how soon that next box and that next part of your story will come, that's an expectation. And so how expectations ruins that is assuming how fast it'll happen. And this comes back to patience. I roll. Oh my gosh, I'm the most impatient person ever. So changing your expectations too, it will take a while. And maybe if you set your expectations a little bit more realistically and it comes a little bit sooner, then that's an awesome situation to be in. Or what exactly will happen? So this goes into knowing it can and will change, simply coming to terms with knowing this, that it'll unexpectedly change. One day you'll wake up and you'll be like, this just is not it. Or I've only gone down this rabbit hole for like a few months and now I'm kind of over it, So just having these understanding that this is the case, and here's a really awesome example. So I was talking with a family friend of mine, super, super smart girl, super bright, got a Northwestern degree. And she started I hope she's not listening to this, but so she started out as a education major, wanting to teach math. And she changed to want to be pre-PA/bio or whatever smart medical person it is. And then she switched to psych. She got a psych degree. She's like, oh, all these clinical rotations I did and the psych degree, and I graduated, and now I think I want to teach, And then I was like, well, so your dad, what does he do? He's taught at the same school for his entire career. And I was like, how many people have a situation like that, where they student teach, they end up teaching there for the rest of their life? She said, he's an anomaly, that's not what people do. And I was like, I want you to pursue this teaching thing so hard. And I know that it's not going to be the last thing, right? I want it to change and I know it will change, right? You could do it for a year and you realize, this isn't it. It could be 2, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 15. But I want you to go into this knowing that this is not going to be the last job you will ever have in your entire life. And she kind of took a step back and her eyes kind of widened. And she was like, whoa. I was like, it's expectations, like I can only speak to this stuff because I have the most unrealistic expectations, hence my impatience. But knowing that it can and will change and being okay with that, and not necessarily half-heartedly doing your job, but going all in. But when that unexpected change does happen, that you are prepared for it. So I thought that was a pretty cool example And just her reaction, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was like, do this teaching thing and it's going to change. She was like, whoa. So it's just a really cool story. So consequently, reframing your expectations, and I hate labeling stuff. And, of course, there's always going to be exceptions to this. So don't come after me. But if you were to reframe your expectations, being an ambitious 20-something-year-old, I should have picked a more conducive title for me to say multiple times. An ambitious 20-something-year-old, that you are in the experience accumulation stage. Your job after 4 years is to have so many things that you have checked off as I did that, it wasn't it. Here's what I liked. Here's what I didn't like. And, it could be your third thing you stumble upon, your fourth, your fifth. I know people that changed their major 7 times. I'm fortunate enough to where I stuck with my major. I love it. But within that, I'm trying new different things. So you are in the experience accumulation stage of your young life, even though my body would tell you that I'm like 70 years old. It's a different story. So you are accumulating experiences. And here's a good question, right? So it comes back to asking and answering better questions. If you had everything you wanted tomorrow, you woke up, you had the perfect job, all the benefits, you had the story that you wanted to tell, you had the family, everything was content, you were just super happy. You had all of that tomorrow. Is that what you would want? Literally, I can give you all of that tomorrow. And I've asked myself this question, and the answer is no. If I had a house with the spouse and the kids and the job, and I was, 24 and, let's just say 300 days and 301 days old tomorrow, is that what I'd want? And honestly, no. As much as we can go on one end of the extreme of expectations of, oh, this is going to happen so quick, and the next job I get is going to be awesome, and I'm going to get all these promotions and it's going to be just how I planned it. Well, I can go on the flip side and say, all right, I'll give it to you. Is that really what you want? So now that we have a little bit more realistic expectations about if we really had what we wanted, but then consequently reframing it to, I'm just trying to accumulate as much experience as possible, not simply to accumulate it, but knowing that when something doesn't pan out, that it is still valuable because you have more experience. And the last point on this is when it makes sense, full send. And when I spoke earlier about how I'm asking a lot of questions, I'm doing the right things, and I'm taking action, similar to the things that I made happen in, some of these clubs and my thesis and stuff, is that not that I have it all figured out, but when I decide and when I realize that it makes sense, I just go and do it. I have this, I say childlike ability. I haven't found a better phrase. If you have one, let me know. But this childlike ability to simply like, oh, okay, it makes sense. I can see how that's relevant. I can see how that experience could be valuable to me. I'm just going to go do it now, as opposed to just doing stuff upon first thought. A lot of the stuff I do, I think a ton about. That's another one of my many weaknesses. But once it makes sense, full send, and that's how you accumulate experience. And that's how you learn if it's going to stick or if it's not going to stick. So when it makes sense, full send. Last step, action step, if I can wrap this up quickly. So you have to ask yourself and others those questions, whether it was starting with the why, where, and the what, or just, bouncing questions off of your mentors, colleagues, their experiences of their jobs and whatnot. And you have to affirm those new expectations, whether you want to write them out, whether you want to just talk through them with others, whether you want to, look into a mirror and say it to yourself. Somehow you have to get these expectations in your head. And instead of them being these new expectations, they just have to be your actual expectations. And you have to become an expert mixer and matcher. And this was the advice that I gave my family friend that I referenced earlier. And here's explaining what that means. So when you're accumulating experiences and you're trying to make it happen, you have to mix and match. And I could literally go through every year of college and graduate school, and I could say, this is what I did. This is why I did it, because it made sense. This is how I fully sent it, to use that phrase again, because I love it. This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like. Here's what I got out of it. And this is how it consequently influenced my next set of decisions. Or here's how that experience, I didn't just let it stop when that experience ended. I took stuff out of it into what I was doing next. And so whether it was physical therapy, freshman year of high school, I got hurt. I was like, oh, I can work with athletes. This is pretty cool. And that was kind of boring as I kept going to PT. And then I was like, oh, athletic training, like specifically with athletes. So I did that in high school, sports medicine club. I was like, it's a rehab. It's still kind of slow. And then I started doing performance or strength and conditioning. And then I got an internship. And then I started doing that more just at school, but also when I was home at TC Boost. And then I liked that. And then I started coaching with all of these different populations and all these different sports. And then I went off to college and I did something performance-y, but sports science-y. So not coaching, but technology. And I realized what I liked about that versus what I didn't like about performance and coaching and tech and all those different things. And basically mix and match, or compare and contrast, I guess, could be, similar terms. And then my podcast and my content. So I started a blog, what was that, junior year of undergrad? Oh my gosh. And let's just say I do not blog anymore. I don't really like writing as much. And then was that two years later, I was like, you know what? I want to make a podcast. And look, it stuck, and just my content in general, from YouTube videos to trying to become TikTok famous, which just you wait is going to happen. And all these different content creations that I've tried out. There's ones that have stuck and there's ones that haven't. Videography, for example, here's 2 pictures. I've been flown across the country to see, well, not to see these, but these are sites that I've seen while being flown across the country to make videos. So that started in quarantine when I wanted to learn how to make videos because I like watching YouTube videos. I'm not a big Netflixer. So I got a camera and I started making videos, all these different things around the house and whatnot. Now I don't really make those kinds of videos anymore, but what I learned there is valuable for my content and my podcast. And now I'm technically a freelancer, So although the original idea or the original goal of getting a camera has changed and it's not the same anymore, well, those skills are still valuable. I'm just applying it differently. For example, the current thing that I'm on is the road to 90. So the road to 90 would be me, because I was a pitcher. I never really threw very hard. And I used to always say, oh, if I knew what I know now, back when I was an athlete, now that I'm a performance coach, I could have thrown way harder. So I'm like, well, I gotta know if that's true or not, if I'm worth my salt, if I am really worth what I say I am. So this is relevant for multiple reasons, because first off, it gives my workouts and training direction. That's one thing that I've been missing once I stopped playing baseball. It is relevant to me as a coach because I'm trying and learning and experimenting on myself, and it has helped me a better coach already. I'm like 4 or 5 weeks in. Programming, knowing how it should feel like, just working with my athletes and stuff like that. So that's a current journey I'm on. If that works out, great. If I end up working with a ton of baseball players, great. If I don't, well, there's things I'm going to learn from this road to 90 about programming and writing workouts and doing things more specifically that I could probably apply to a vertical jump program, or I could probably apply to whatever it may be. So there's these things that are still relevant that can be transferred, comparing and contrasting. Things are a lot more similar than dissimilar. So I want you to become an expert mixer and matcher. Your job is to mix all these different things up, realize the similarities and the dissimilarities, things you like, things you things you don't like, and then match them together and put them together. And what do you find the most valuable? What impact do you want to make? How do you want to manifest that on a daily basis? Where will this be taking place? So I'm not going to repeat myself. I thought I did that pretty well. So let me know you are not alone, you ambitious 20-something-year-old. I'm very excited that you're here. Hope this makes sense. If there's any questions, you just want to talk this stuff out, I'm learning just as much as you are, and hopefully you got some value out of this. Some light bulbs went off, and we will figure this out. So let me know. Happy being ambitious-ing. I'm so bad at ending podcasts. Bye.